Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And this is the show that just brings you random shit every week.
It be the show where anything go.
Nobody else on the internet talks about stuff on a weekly basis like we do.
Not as hard as we do. We go fucking hard. Because we have notes. Like I have notes this week. That's crazy.
Oh man, I've got way too many notes this week, so it should be good.
There's like three podcasts maybe that take notes before every show. And that's just a fact, and we're one of them. So we're top 3 podcasts of all time.
Yeah.
Last week I depressed the hell out of you talking about some Italian serial killers.
The funny part is, and maybe this says something about me or our show, or both, but like as you were talking about the killers themselves and the killings, like that wasn't depressed. I mean, it's bad, of course. It's not like, yeah, go murderers. But, you know, we're used to it. We've talked about serial killers before.
Right.
And then you got to the end and like how their individual stories played out, and that was depressing.
Right. You know, that was... I didn't even realize going into that story when I was getting ready for it how depressing of an ending that would be, because that was not my intention. I was just like, well, this is a fucked up story, and then like it turns out it's way worse.
Yeah.
And then you talked about a way cooler topic, the Night Witches of World War II.
The Nachthexen, if you're German. But you got to say it with way more like spit. Nachthexen or whatever.
That's like what they called John Wick, like the Russian cartels, like those like Baba Yaga for Boogeyman. It's like that's always awesome.
Yeah.
When like another language has like their own cool like, shh, we don't talk about, you know.
And I just love that it was like a group of women fighter pilots for the Soviets, but where they like begrudgingly they're like, yeah, we need more bodies, but they're women. Fuck it, let's just give them the like trash. And they're like, fine, fuck you. We're going to kick ass with what we got. Right.
Which I'm sure was exactly what they said. It wasn't like, this is bullshit. We're going to die with this. But yeah, so that just kind of goes to show, if you haven't listened to the show before, we kind of talk about anything and everything. But I did realize we kind of fucked up last week. It being October, it is the perfect time to talk about the type of shit I talk about 90% of the time anyway.
Yeah, and I like that you're throwing me under that bus because I talked about something with the word witches in it, even though, you know, they weren't witches, but
exactly,
at least it had the theme.
We have real witches to talk about. Actually, we don't. That's not my topic today, but it's even better. This is about Robert the Living Doll.
Oh, cool.
So I want to shout out a thank you to Florida, and I want to shout out a thank you to WeirdUS.com. You might remember them from our Melonheads episode. I went back to my favorite well so far doing this show is that website. I was actually a little disappointed because on that site they break everything down by state, but there are just state pages that they don't have anything on yet.
Oh, come on, states. Get on this shit.
Well, but they have books about it. They just haven't put it on the website yet.
Oh, okay. Well, then come on, website people. Get on this shit so we can steal your hard work and put it on our podcast.
Yeah, hard work. Let's get into some of this hard work. I'm trashing them, but I really do like their fucking 2001 website. So they start with a little intro. That I'm going to just read verbatim. Key West, Florida. A child of 10 awakens in the middle of the night and finds one of his brightest daytime companions, a stuffed doll, staring at him from the foot of his bed. There's something unnatural about the glassy eyes, the expressionless face. The child, for no reason he can understand, is paralyzed with fear. Across the house, the child's mother is awakened by her son's screams and the sounds of furniture being overturned. She rushes to his room, panic-stricken, to find the door locked. On the other side of the door, she can hear the sounds of chaos and giggling, broken only by the screams of her son calling out to her, pleading for a rescue. When at last she wrenches the door open, she finds her son still huddled in his bed, his room destroyed, and a rag doll sitting placidly at the foot of the bed. "Robert did it," says the boy in a frightened whisper. It is not uncommon for children to have imaginary friends. Oftentimes, a mischievous child will blame some wrongdoing on a spectral presence or a favorite doll, and parents will dismiss it as a bright imagination. But what happens when the doll begins to torment the child and terrorize anyone who lives within the household? Such is the strange case of Robert, the haunted doll of Key West, Florida.
Dun, dun, dun.
That story didn't happen, in case you were wondering. Like, even for the people who believe in the haunted doll, I don't know what the fuck that intro was. It doesn't say anything about him, like the doll locking the room and fucking with the kid like that.
It wouldn't work because as a parent, well, I'd be mad at my kid because you'd never fucking believe that a doll came to life. And you'd be like, stop fucking lying to me. Why did you trash your room?
Which
is
if
funny.
They
kept insisting it was a doll, you'd just burn the fucking thing or throw it away.
Which is funny because there's actually a Twilight Zone episode about a guy being tormented by his kid's doll. And he tries all that. It doesn't work.
Well, yeah. That's when you know to believe your kid is when you burn the doll, then it shows up like you're in the shower and it just pulls the curtain back with a knife like Psycho. And then you're like, oops, I done fucked up.
Hey, just don't give your kid like a human doll would be my advice. Like, I had stuffed animals when I was a kid. None of them could fuck with me. It was like fucking, I had like a duck and a rabbit, I think. They like, and we're ahead of them on the food chain. So any ghost that possesses them is already going to feel inferior.
Right.
So the story of Robert starts at the Artist House, which was a house built in 1898 by Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Otto. I always love when couples are written that way, where it's like, to the wife, like, fuck your name and identity, you're Thomas too now.
You're Mrs. Guy's name.
You're Mrs. Me, damn it. They were a well-off couple, but they were supposedly abusive towards their servants. I mean, imagine that. One mistreated servant girl was well versed in the arts of voodoo, which I pointed out as I was getting ready for the show is a fantastic band name.
See, and I instantly go back to the ICP song because I have to shamefully admit that in high school I listened to ICP for that 6 month period.
Is Arts of Voodoo an ICP song?
No, just the voodoo.
Oh.
Voodoo, running from my magic. Because that's how...
God damn it, that's a copyright strike. Fuck.
Shit. Yeah, right.
I just gotta bleep it.
They would never recognize that as a song. It's me singing it, but...
stealing it, more like. You owe royalties, friend.
Insane Steve posse, bitches.
To get her revenge, this servant girl made a 3-foot-tall straw doll for their son, Robert Eugene Otto, who was just called Gene by his friends.
So, advice number 1 here is if a person you abuse makes a 3-foot-tall doll for somebody that you care about, don't accept the present.
Yeah. It's really weird. Like, the doll it's dressed up in like a sailor outfit and shit, and it's weird. It's the exact type of thing you wouldn't want to be your son's best friend. The doll would be his companion and friend for all of his childhood. And he, as the title states, he named it Robert after himself, which I thought was very weird.
Yes.
Because it's like, hey, maybe if you're Robert, then mom and dad will actually talk to you. Like,
well, that's the way when they say, Robert, clean your room, they could be talking to you.
And I'll throw you in there, and then you'll get really haunted. So he took the doll with him everywhere, and his parents would often hear him upstairs talking to the doll and responding in an entirely different voice. I'm not a parent, so I don't really know at what point is it like imaginary playing, and at what point is it like, do you start to worry?
Call the psychologist, right?
Yeah, like,
I think the difference is like when you're like, hey, Robert number 2, do you want to go swinging? Yes, that would be cool. Let's go to the swing set. That's okay. It's weird. Your kid's a dork, but it's okay. But when it's like, hey, Robert, what do you want to do today? Let's burn the fucking house down.
It's when you're 25 and you're asking the doll, what do you want to eat?
Although I do have a question for you. You said he takes a doll everywhere he goes. You also said it's a 3-foot tall doll. Right. That seems really fucking inconvenient.
I mean, It's his buddy. It's made of straw, so it's not like heavy or anything. Yeah. So, but you know, it is probably lanky and awkward, and it is wild, roughly. Well, not roughly, like a little bit shorter than him. But yeah, it was his best friend. So naturally, being a creepy fucking doll that their kid was obsessed with, weird shit started to happen to the family. What's weird about Weird US's article on this thing is, like, they don't really break down what weird shit happened at all.
You don't need to. You're talking about a 3-foot tall straw doll that's possessed by voodoo. Weird shit's adequate.
Right. So, like, I'm assuming it's the typical haunting stuff. Something breaks or moves. Something seems weird, off. You hear something in the middle of the night. And it seemed like anytime something fucked up happens, Gene would appear holding his sailor suit clad doll and proclaiming Robert did it.
That's like the worst, like, Friday night family sitcom, like the Urkel. Robert did it.
Larry, the cable guy, is Robert the haunted doll. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if you do have a creepy doll as your bestie, like, don't fucking rat on him, because that'll only piss him off.
Good point.
But yeah, apparently Gene was, like, the first to, like, throw his fucking friend under the bus, so no wonder we're still dealing with Robert's bullshit today.
Which kind of also calls into question, like, who was actually responsible, because that's typically the thing that the, like, guilty party does.
Yeah, maybe Robert just got fucking fed up with, like, being blamed for shit all the time.
Right.
So while most would agree this was probably just a rowdy child with an overactive imagination, those close to the family actually believed the doll was playing some part in the weird shit going on, claiming they could hear giggling coming from the doll, catch a glimpse of him running up steps, or spying the doll staring down at them through a window. Unlike most children in their childhood toys, Gene didn't quite outgrow Robert. He grew up and got married, but when his parents died, he inherited the artist house, which is a great fucking name for a house, like a personal home. It's like, this is the Art Institute. It's like, it's just a 1-bedroom.
The artist house sounds like some, like, stupid ass hipster bistro downtown that charges like $24 for a cappuccino.
Sounds like a movie theater where they just show, like, Rocky Horror Picture Show all the time. So Gene inherited the house and rediscovered the doll in the attic. You would think as soon as he went off to college or some shit, the first thing his dad would do would throw the fucking creepy doll away.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you at least got to try. Like you said, if it's possessed, it'll come back. But you at least got to try, right?
Right. Who knows? Maybe he did. Maybe he thought he got rid of it, and then Robert fucking snuck into the attic and lived up there for a while.
Biding his time.
Immediately, Robert's presence had an effect on Gene. His wife, unsettled by the creepy sailor doll, insisted they change the doll's expression or something to make it less eerie, but Gene would never alter it. When she locked it back in the attic, Gene went into a rage, demanding that Robert needed a room of his own where he could see the street.
That's when you start to seek an annulment. Like,
it's like he needs a room of his own and a television with HBO and a sports package. And God save you if you come in on Sundays, honey, because that's football, and you'll be cursed. Like, I don't know what the fuck Gene's problem was. He was either crazy or just wanted his own space.
Well, if you think about it, that doll was probably Gene's first lover. And so he was like, even though he's married now, then you're like, suddenly you're reunited with like that, your first, you're like, oh man, I don't want to give this up.
I should specify it's not that type of doll. You know, as far as we know, no holes were manufactured for Robert the haunted doll. Thank God. Eventually, Gene agreed that the doll was creepy and weird and put it back in the attic. So just kind of like after a while, he was just like, yeah, this is fucked up. I'm going crazy. Sorry, honey. Didn't mean to snap at you about my childhood friend. But
that's got to be an awkward conversation, too.
Right. It was like, you know what? This is fucking weird even for me, and I've been hanging out with this fucking doll for 20 years. So he put it back in the attic, but visitors would claim to hear something walking back and forth in the attic, even though nobody could be up there. Like, the attic door would be shut, and supposedly nobody could be up there. Or they would hear giggling during quiet evenings.
God damn, this doll and it's giggling.
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe it's just he has a fucking annoying laugh, and that's why people hate him. Right. More than once, it was reported that the doll would watch people through the window of his personal room, despite Gene insisting that Robert was still in the attic. He would be shocked to find that, like, he would bring the doll back up to the attic, and then head back downstairs, and the doll would be back in a rocking chair by the window. So it's like turned into a Looney Tunes bit.
Right.
It's just like, fuck it, Bugs Bunny down there. So Gene died in 1972, and many thought the legend of Robert the Doll would die with him. As WeirdUS.com notes, however, evil never dies, unless you kill it.
Yeah, they haven't watched a whole lot of horror movies.
Right, then it pretty much has to, like, yeah, Jason dies in every movie he's in.
Right, like, he may come back, but eventually there's the last movie in the franchise, and they die for good.
Right, and it turns out the source of his power was film budgets. So Robert waited in the attic for another family to buy the house. When that family's 10-year-old girl found Robert up there, she claimed him for her own.
Wait. Why is a 10-year-old girl the one exploring the attic first?
Parenthood. I don't know.
I mean, I get it. When we bought our house like that, I wasn't particularly thrilled about going and climbing up into the attic. And I'll be honest, I've owned this house for 13 years, and I've been up there like twice.
If I had a kid, I would totally throw him under the bus and make him go check out like cramped spaces that inevitably have tons of spiders.
Exactly.
Let me know if there's anything important up there, and then, try not to get bit.
Go ahead, honey. There's nothing to be afraid of. Well, then you go up there, Daddy. Fuck you.
Fuck that. That's dangerous. So this 10-year-old girl found Robert, and the doll supposedly tormented her throughout her childhood. Even 30 years later, this woman claims the doll was alive and wanted her dead, and she's still traumatized from it. Who she actually is or what the doll actually did, they don't say, so it's probably the most horrible thing ever. It's literally, they just throw out that like a 10-year-old girl had the doll and it fucking nearly drove her insane. Robert's surprising popularity compared to other stories of haunted dolls seems to be entirely due to just how many people claim to have seen his evil firsthand. His evil. Again, his evil pretty much consists of giggling and watching people through a window.
See, that's not that evil.
Right. He's just kind of annoying, but mostly chill.
Right.
Like a weird, like somebody who would live in an apartment next to you.
Are we sure he was made out of straw, or was there's some like weed in there? And that's the problem. He's just high.
If he's high all the time, you stop giggling after a while. The laughter wears off, and you just kind of become boring. That's the experience I've had with people who've been basically made of weed.
Fingers are like legs for your hands, man.
So the doll has gotten a reputation for pranks to those who take care of him now. He's staying in the Key West Martello Museum, and an employee cleaned Robert and left for the evening one night. He turned off the lights and locked up. When he arrived the next day, several lights were turned back on, including one near Robert's case. Not so much a prank as much as it is financially inconsiderate, but sure. Great prank,
environmentally,
Robert.
Like, not responsible. It's like,
yeah, so Robert's just maybe kind of a dick.
See, I love that basically so far everything that this doll supposedly did can be linked to something that a person would do but not want to admit to. Like, maybe he was drunk on the job, or he just wanted to get the fuck out of there, and he's like, I'm not turning these lights off. Robert did it.
Dude, if I worked in this museum, I would do so many Robert pranks and not tell anyone.
I totally did not shit in the lobby. That was Robert.
Robert totally ate your lunch, dude. I saw him. I saw a glimpse of him running up the stairs with it. And Robert's shoes also appear to have a fresh coat of dust on them, as if he had been walking around the museum.
How fucking dusty is this museum that's just walking around it with, like, dust up your feet?
That's the thing. The employee's trying to distract from the fact that he didn't fucking vacuum.
Or turn lights off. Like,
you're right. He's like,
basically what I'm hearing is as soon as the boss left, it's like, you've got another hour left till the weekend, but we'll see you on Monday. He's like, yeah, I'll definitely be here another hour.
Right. Employees also claim to have heard tapping on the glass case they keep the doll in when they pass by, which I think of everything they say Robert does, that would probably be the creepiest at first. And then it would just...
What's the sound of straw tapping on glass? Like,
maybe he's doing it with his eye. So like the eye button, so you're hearing it. Back at the artist house, it's now a bed and breakfast, and the weird bumps in the night continue despite the doll being gone.
Well, there you go.
There you go. Maybe it's just a shitty, rickety house. The staff claim that the spirit of Jean's wife, Anne, resides in the turret room that the doll obsessively loved to look out the window from. Supposedly...
It would make sense, this like ghost pacing back and forth for all of eternity going, I married a fucking guy that had a doll.
He's a fucking dipshit. Supposedly they say she's there to make sure the creepy little doll never returns. Which I'm sure is totally what any woman wants to do with their eternal afterlife, guarding a house from their crazy husband's imaginary bullshit friend.
Right.
Like, Anne got fucked in this. Like, don't get married, because this is what happens. Way worse than divorce is, like, having to fucking babysit your husband's
possessed voodoo doll,
forever. But Robert seems to be living the good life for a haunted doll now at the museum. Popular among visitors, despite the fact that cameras have been said to stop working when pointed at the doll, except for the fact that there's a clear fucking picture of him attached to the article.
Yeah, I was just looking that up. I'm like, I've seen this doll on Mysteries at the Museum or something like that. I don't remember the story, but as soon as I saw the doll, I'm like, yep, I recognize that.
Right. It turns out cameras do work if you fucking have batteries and you know what you're doing.
I like this picture of him, though, because he appears to have like a stuffed puppy dog cock. Like, just in his lap, there's this dog just poking straight up.
I'm sorry?
That's weird.
He has a cock?
Yeah, but it's a dog. Like, what? The way they've got it sitting and holding, it's weird.
Oh, yeah, he has a stuffed animal. I was so fucking confused what you were talking about.
It just looks like it's either like his anatomy is this dog, or
I was gonna say like you're looking at a different article, man, because the one I was
reading, this is Robert the Living Sex Doll.
Yeah, the one I was reading, like he didn't drop trow and he wasn't like beating off.
I don't know. He sure traumatized that little girl pretty good.
That'll do it.
Want to pet my puppy?
That fucking gross. Dude. Popular among visitors, despite the fact that cameras stopped working, except for the one attached to the article.
And the 400 pictures on Google, if you Google it.
Right. Pictures are fine. He's especially popular in October, where he's moved from the museum to the historic Custom House, which is a few blocks away, as he's a special attraction there. This time of the year, he's said to be his most active, so employees leave him a bag of peppermint candies in his case to try to bribe him into behaving. They always swear there are fewer candies the next day, and I think they would probably all be gone, and he would probably behave better if they gave him candy worth a fuck.
Right.
Fucking.
You want some peppermint candies, little boy? Fuck you.
Peppermint candies are the fucking worst. That is the most half-assed goddamn gift. I hate peppermint candies. God damn it, now I'm pissed.
Yeah, get me some Skittles or get the fuck out.
Come on, dude. Like, a fun-sized fucking bag of Halloween candy isn't hard. Yeah. Like, and Robert would probably put on a better show. At this point, he's been around for fucking over 100 years, and, like...
Hops up and does the jitterbug or something.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. That'd be all right. Robert the dancing doll.
He missed the vaudeville days, though.
Yeah. Well, Sorry, Robert. Anyway, that's what I got.
Maybe we'll see him someday on, like, America's Got Voodoo.
Well, I'm going to go see him right now.
I just love the idea of these like haunted, usually dolls, but like just inanimate objects that are possessed. It's like, yeah, they're supposed to be so like evil, but this one didn't do anything evil at all.
He just stared at people, made them feel uncomfortable.
Sure, but I mean,
and apparently psychologically tormented a little girl. That's pretty bad.
But did he, or was she just like, it's one of those they accidentally made eye contact like you do sometimes when you're at a restaurant and she read way too much into it?
I mean, she says that, it fucking traumatized her, and she like...
Yeah, but people say like remaking Ghostbusters traumatized them.
But I mean, like, it's only, her story's only held back by the fact that she might not exist at all.
Anyway, like I also like the idea that these like evil possessed objects are evil and possessed, but they'll only move when it's a situation where you may or may not know that they did for sure. Like I said, they never get up and like just walk straight at you like they're going to strangle you to death.
To be fair, if it was like, it's kind of true about all ghost things, is like if you had real proof, one, it wouldn't be like a ghost thing anymore. This is a real thing we have to deal with. And two, like if a fucking doll started moving and running around, we would kill it like right away.
Right, yeah.
Like there would be no story.
That goes back to like my first question though. It's like that. I think that would have been step one. As soon as when it got to the point where you said, "Oh, but people who knew the family and friends and family members, they thought it really was possessed." Fire. Fire's the answer.
Yeah. That's why my ghost show is the best, highest rated one on networks. Because it's just a 5-minute, like, well, we'll burn it and see what happens.
Sponsored by Elon Musk and Tesla. We'll go into these like haunted houses and we'll be, be quiet. This is where it said that Mrs. Lovensworth was brutally murdered. And then you hear a bump and we just like open fire with our Elon Musk flamethrowers and just burn the fucker to the ground.
We were going to pull an all-nighter at the Civil War memorial site, but we got kind of tired, so we just lit it on fire. No
the
more
end
haunting.
Of every episode is just us like trying to catch our breath covered in soot. Like, oh man, we barely got out of there alive.
Next time on Ghost Arson.
I like it. So, a good story. Like I said, that is a creepy-ass doll. Despite the fact that it cannot possibly be captured on film, I suggest Googling it and looking at all the film that captured it. Like, maybe it's a ghost that couldn't keep up with technology, and like you couldn't capture it on film, but now everything's digital, and the ghost is sitting here like, fuck, I can't deal with that.
Yeah, so far the most evil thing about Robert is his taste for candy, and like I said, I don't even blame him for that. Like,
well, maybe he's not even eating them. He's taking the candies and like throwing them at like pigeons or something.
Maybe that's what he's tapping on the glass with.
That's true.
Just that's what else can I do with these? They taste like shit.
The next day, the museum curator woke up with peppermints shoved up his nostrils.
Then you know something's up if like somebody dies and their just face is just full of fucking peppermint candies.
We ran toxicology screenings and we found peppermint.
How the fuck do I not have a horror movie made yet? Like, this is as good as anything you're gonna watch in 2018. So,
I like it. Yeah. So, good story. Robert the Living Doll. That's probably, I say probably, is definitely not living, but certainly is a doll.
But thriving.
Yeah. So, making money.
Making bank.
So basically, Robert the Living Doll, this inanimate object, has the same business skills as, what's his face that you talked about back in like week 4, the dynamite guy that went on display as a traveling mummy.
Oh, yeah. I forgot his name because I'm a pro, but...
We do too many shows. Yeah. That was at least 10 episodes back. I feel like it was like Ernest
15
something.
Or something. Yeah, something like that. Anyway.
So, all right. Well, mine. I wanted to start this week by saying the information for my story this week comes from a really amazingly researched and thorough article by Matt Novak. I can't imagine the amount of work that he put in for this, but as always, you'll be able to find a link to that article in the episode description on our homepage.
AKA Bad Matt Novak.
Matt Badvac. I don't know. No, badass Vac. Anyway, no, it's a
Stone Cold
really
Matt Novak.
It's kind of a hell of a piece of when you read it and think of all the work he had to put into to write this piece. It's pretty impressive. So today, Oliver Napoleon Hill is considered one of the fathers of the free thinker self-help movement. But like all many or all, I'd say all self-help gurus, we'll see that Oliver Hill mostly just like helped himself. The history of Oliver Hill is really two separate stories. There's Hill's story, and then what actually happened.
You only get one story on this show.
Ah, no, there are two.
No, you fucker.
The two are often like only loosely related. Throughout the show, you'll hear me say "according to Hill" a lot. You should probably take that as a hint that whatever I'm about to say is mostly or completely bullshit. I almost even put in here, anytime I say "according to Hill," it'd be a great drinking game, but I really don't want to be responsible for people's deaths, because
there's a lot of preamble to this. I feel like I'm about to start like reading a textbook.
Yep. Well, that was my very next note kind of to myself, as I said, all the best non-essential stories come with like a 5-minute disclaimer up front. But anyway.
Like we got it. He's a bullshitter.
Sure. Yep.
Let's do it.
So both of Hill's stories start in 1883 when he was born, full name Oliver Napoleon Hill. His father made a living off of dentistry, except for he was never actually licensed as a dentist. And he also made money moonshining. So that's perhaps where Nap Hill, as his family tended to call him, learned his work ethic. Like, I love that. Like, the school days where you talk about your parents' professions, be like, what does your dad do? He doesn't do dentistry, wink, wink.
You're really good at lying, Ollie.
Oh, you have no idea. Nap's mother would die when he was just 9 years old, and his father would remarry to a woman named Martha. According to Hill, there's her first one, he would fill his days running around the backwoods of Virginia, causing trouble with his pistol. You know, as 8-year-olds often do, I guess. Like, just go on, son, go shoot some shit.
Yeah.
I'm making moonshine. Just don't shoot the still, though, because fuck, that'd be bad. He said it was his stepmother who would be the one to tame his wild spirit by purchasing him a typewriter and encouraging him by saying that if he could learn to write as well as he could shoot, he'll certainly become rich and famous. So, of course, Nap started writing for a weekly flyer. I imagine, like, just a local, like, bulletin board. I guess our town had them, you know, like they're not real newspapers. They're just that bullshit like, oh, come to Aunt Millie's on Friday for a pie cooking contest or whatever.
Right.
But sometimes the stories would get picked up by the newspaper. Unfortunately, there wasn't always a lot going on in the backwoods of Virginia, so Knapp took to making stories up when necessary. According to Hill, he would eventually be married 3 separate times over the course of his life, except for the fact that that number does not include a girl that he got pregnant when he was 15 and was forced to marry by her father. However, it wasn't long before this marriage was annulled. Shockingly, it didn't work out. The woman's name was never mentioned in the article, but that's likely because there is scant record of her existence. Because again, according to Hill, she didn't exist. And you'll find that a lot of inconvenient facts about Oliver Hill simply cease to exist when viewed through Hill's perspective.
You know what? I'm starting to respect this guy. That's my play with every girl I've ever liked.
Didn't happen.
They're not real. You know, so it's not no big deal. I made that whole fucking year of my life up.
So after graduating high school, which apparently happened after he got this girl pregnant, married, and then separated from her, Hill went on to attend business school and then began working for a Rufus Ayers in Tazewell, Virginia. Ayers was a former attorney general and businessman who had turned to the profitable world of coal in order to grow his wealth.
Come on, Ollie, we got a future for you.
You look
Black
like
lung.
an upstanding high school kid. Come on, work for me doing some nondescript job. According to Hill, Ayers was so impressed with Hill's work ethic, and specifically his impeccable business suits and clean dress manner and, I quote, rod-straight posture, that after just 6 months, Hill was promoted to a position as clerk at a mine in Richmond.
Never trust somebody with a rod-straight posture. Like, that's all I'm going to say. Like, fucking Pete Campbell and Mad Men there.
I like that that's his story, is like, I went to work for this guy, and he was so impressed because I looked nice. Like, wouldn't you just say I was just so good at my job? But
no,
whatever.
I think we kind of talked about that, like, before, like, how great it would be if, like, we were some of the beautiful people and just got everything handed to us. And it was, like, out in the open that, like, hey, no, you're getting this just because you are physically the best of us.
That's true. I reversed my stance. It's now refreshing for somebody to admit that, like, I got this job because I'm pretty.
Yeah.
So Hill has, if you can't tell, he has a tendency of, call it humble bragging, when he recounts the story of his life. And it's at this point that he really, like, begins unabashedly, like, patting himself on the back for his work ethic. For the rest of his life, he'd be quick to point out, suspiciously frequently, that he was a man who never took a single penny that he didn't earn. Kind of goes back to what we were saying about Robert the Living Doll.
I feel like you could, like, quote that from Al Capone.
Pretty much.
Like, everyone would say that, and it's not true.
Picturing this nerdy kid at a party, and somebody's like, "Oh yeah, I build railroads for a living." He's like, "Well, I never took a single penny that I didn't earn." It's like, wait.
That is fucking literally impossible. Like, even if you're the poorest person ever, like, you definitely took money at some point that you didn't earn. And that's not to say you stole it, but maybe somebody gave you money, and, like, I've had it where it's like, yeah, I totally didn't deserve that $20, but my parents gave it to me. For 5
minutes,
anyway.
you read the funnies in the newspaper at work instead of doing your job, but you still put it on your time. That's taking money you didn't earn. Like,
right? I had 2 minutes today at work where I drank cold coffee. And it was, not intentionally cold. It was because I was fucking so busy beforehand, but I got paid for that. Haha. Yeah.
Fuck you, you thief.
Take that, corporations.
So here's an example of the type of stories that Oliver Hill would tell to build up, just how great his character was. So during his time as clerk in Richmond, he would recount the tale of, according to Hill, a tale of how one night a cashier from one of Ayers' banks, his boss had multiple business, ventures. One of them was he owned a bank. And one of the cashiers went on a bender, ended up in the nearby hotel lobby. In his inebriated state, the cashier would accidentally drop his gun, which went off and killed a bellboy, who, just by chance, I'm sure, happened to be black. Upon catching wind of the unfolding events, the ever-professional Hill raced to the scene and began interviewing the witnesses. According to Hill, he then raced to the bank for some reason to, check on it, and he found that the bank and the safe were unlocked and the place was in total disarray. There was money spilled everywhere. So Hill took it upon himself to sit down and take account of every last dollar. Once all tallied, he discovered that not a dime was missing. So he would go on to brag about how, given the state the bank was found in, he could have easily made off with $15,000 to $20,000 or more without anybody ever being the wiser. But instead, he didn't take a single cent because
what kind of fucking psychopath does the mental math there. I respect the person who does just go in and take the money more than I respect the person who does the mental gymnastics to be like, but if I just sit here and count it, people will think I'm a really cool guy.
Right. It's like the person that does the oh, you helped an old lady reach something on the top shelf at the grocery store, but then you have to go tell every fucker that you meet for the next 3 weeks that you helped somebody.
Right.
Yeah, it makes it really suspicious if you doing the right thing. A lot of people would, but then frequently pointing out that you did the right thing is kind of weird.
Well, just like pointing it out that like I could have done the wrong thing here. Like if you do a good thing that makes you feel good for somebody like else, like that's one thing, you know. And I can kind of, it might get annoying, but I could kind of be like, I can see why you're proud of that moment.
Yeah, true. I mean, you'd be telling this story and be like, oh, I went to the bank and man, it was a mess, and I counted it, made sure every dollar was there, and it was. You know, that's one thing. But to say I could have taken money, but I didn't.
I could have been rich. Yeah, you're like you're Better Call Saul season 1, where you're just like, well, why didn't we take all the money?
So, according to Hill, his boss was so impressed by his honesty, his cool-headedness, and professionalism that he promoted him to manager of one of the local coal mines. According to the author of the article I cited at the beginning, and I tend to agree, the much more likely story is that after the accidental or not killing of the bellboy, what Hill actually did was rush to the scene, using untraceable bank money to help cover up the crime and basically bribe witnesses to protect the company name.
That is so fucking weird.
And then, of course, the promotion was more of a, like, thanks for saving our ass than it was a, you're so honest and good.
That's good, honest Ollie.
In 1903, so he would have been 20 years old, he would marry his second wife, Edith Whitman Hill, of course, was his name that she took. 2 years after they wed, they'd have a daughter that they'd also name Edith, which is just sadistic if you ask me. Like,
I thought they would also name Robert. That's weird.
Hill and his family moved to Marbury, Alabama for a brief time, but then his wife and daughter would return to Tazewell to live with her family, while Oliver would move to Mobile, Alabama, and begin working at the, I think it's Acre Hill Lumber Company, but there's 2 E's, so it could be Acre Hill. I'm going to call it Acre Hill because that's just easier to say.
Was Mobile where Forrest Gump was from?
I think so. At least that, like, general area. And about this time is when he actually met Forrest, by the way. Oh. Hill doesn't talk much about this period in his life, which is probably because it doesn't make him look particularly good. According to those who knew him, his friends, if he had any, and his work acquaintances, Oliver was fond of women of a certain profession, which he'd regularly visit when he was in various cities for business.
Juggler.
Yes, he just had a thing for jugglers. Spent all of his money like, yeah, I'll give you an extra 100 if you can juggle 5 apples.
It's 10 for the unicycle, sweetie.
As for his wife and daughter, Oliver was prone to anger and violent outbursts because he's such a wonderful guy. And at one point, he even kidnapped his daughter and threatened to leave the country, telling his wife, Edith, that she'd never see her kid again. Fortunately for both his wife and daughter, he did eventually return her. Unsurprisingly, shortly after that, Edith filed for a divorce. It doesn't appear that Hill attempted to contest the divorce. In fact, it doesn't look like he even ever showed up to the hearing. But that's probably because at about the same time, he was arrested for altering checks, a crime that he'd be acquitted of, but it's still something he had to deal with.
But he altered the checks to make it so he got less money.
Less money, because he's such an honest, good guy.
Because he's honest, good Ollie.
I realized that the lumber market future share trades had changed, so I gave them their money back. It's an accounting error. He would often, like, these things would come up and bite him, and he always would blame them on other people, of course, because he was never not the, like, most honest, upstanding person, but everybody was conspired against him to make, you know, these things fail.
Right.
Not only was he arrested, although acquitted of altering checks, his business dealings, and I put business in quotes, at the lumber mill weren't really going very well either. Apparently, Hill had been running a scheme where he would buy up as much lumber as he could on credit and then sell it off at a largely marked down rate, which you can imagine is not the best business plan, particularly long term. The suppliers who he owed money were starting to grow a little concerned about the fact that he wasn't paying them back. His competition grew suspicious and angry that he was grossly undercutting their prices, because when you don't care about, you know, making profit, you can sell for much lower than people that do want to run legitimate businesses. he told his business partner, the J.O. Aker or Acre or whatever, that he had found new investors, and that's why so much money was coming in. But for his part, Mr. Aker was either smarter at fraud or smart enough to figure out that Hill was committing fraud but sucked at it. But either way, he sold off his shares to Hill and got the hell out of there. Like, I don't want any part of this. Of course, it wasn't long before his fraudulent practices became like widely exposed, and he literally pissed off everybody in the lumber industry, which apparently it probably still is a fairly big industry. So Hill went on the run. And this is the point where I put in my notes.
But as he put it, he went for a run.
Went for a run, right. I was just trying to stretch my legs. I don't know why y'all have to go out and claim that I'm running from stuff.
I just took a jog out to this cabin that I built in the woods where no one could find me.
But I like to picture this as like the final act from The Music Man, where Harold Hill, same last name coincidentally, or maybe not, is being chased out of town by the angry mob. But instead of like falling in love and facing the music like The Music Man did, the woman that he's been abusing divorces him, and he just like tucks his tail and runs like the coward that he is. So it's like the more realistic ending to The Music Man. And I'm probably the only dork that will listen to the show and get Music Man references, but
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
There were warrants issued for his arrest. The U.S. Postal Service was investigating him for mail fraud, and at least one, although probably a lot more, lumber companies had filed lawsuit against him. Hill managed to declare bankruptcy, somehow like evading arrest, which is interesting because you know to declare bankruptcy, you're working with a court. You know that the police are looking for the guy, but he manages to like show up to court, be like, "Here's my paperwork, gotta go."
He does the Office thing where he's like, he just pops in like, "I declare bankruptcy," and then pops out.
Too late, you heard me say it.
That's my approach.
So at this point, he leaves the state, and this is in 1908. He leaves and he ends up in what's probably the best possible city in the world for a wife-beating, bad with money, unethical, morally bankrupt fraudster to live, which, of course, is Washington, D.C. So you fit right in.
Bam. Nailed it.
Take that, Washington. Burn.
Should have saved that for Twitter, man. That was fire.
Sadly, it's true, but anyway. That's depressing, and I don't want to think about it. At this time, Hill begins what becomes a lifelong trend of convenient meetings with very famous, very successful people who, according to Hill, admired him for his business acumen, keen intellect, and all the success that he's had. Which
every time he talks, it sounds like Steven Seagal. Like Steven Seagal, if you don't pay attention to him like on Twitter or anything, like he's very up his own ass.
Yeah.
So he's meeting like championship MMA fighters and being like, "I taught him a few things." They're like, no,
right.
you fucking didn't. You couldn't even like coordinate those scenes. You like scripted. You know, like the camera has to cut when you're fighting people because you can't do anything.
That's exactly what Oliver Hill is, like, to a T. Well, kind of worse, because most of the people that he says he's met, he never actually even talked to. In 1908, like I said, the same time he moved to D.C., he, according to Hill, met with Andrew Carnegie, who I think most people are at least somewhat familiar with. I knew he was a billionaire and philanthropist. I just listened to an episode of The Dollop last weekend on a trip and didn't realize, although I should have assumed, how big of a like skeezy asshole he was. But apparently Mr. Hill met with Carnegie in his 64-bedroom mansion, and it was here that Carnegie told him the secrets to financial success, which are a real thing. All the rich people know there's just like 4 steps that you got to do, and anybody could be rich and successful, but they keep it to themselves unless they like you. He charged Hill with a 20-year mission to meet with the world's most successful individuals, which Carnegie would personally introduce Hill to, and interview them to learn their secrets to success. This mission would be unpaid because Carnegie said the knowledge Hill would learn would be payment enough, with it, Hill would surely become successful himself. Although Hill just said that Carnegie met with him because he was successful. According to Hill, to kick things off, Carnegie invited him to stay with him for the entire weekend, all 2 days, where Hill was to learn at his feet, quote unquote, basically shadow him and be like, oh, so this is how business is done.
Go get me lemonade and you will find true success.
Of course, there is no actual record of this and no proof that Carnegie ever met Oliver Hill. In actuality, Oliver Hill spent most of 1908 simply evading all the people that he had pissed off, owed money to, and was hiding from the authorities who wanted to lock him up. But by the end of the year, Hill began dropping the Oliver from his name and began identifying simply as Napoleon Hill, which I do like better. To me, that sounds like the title of a Beatles song or an album or something.
Sounds like a Baskin-Robbins flavor.
Yes, I'd like 3 scoops of the Napoleon Hill.
This is not the Napoleon Hill to die on here.
The following year, Hill joins the Washington Automobile Club and founds the Automobile College of Washington, which he appoints himself president of course, because if you start a business, you tend to...
Well, if you start a club, yeah.
Yeah. Hill had 2 other partners, an R.H. Blakesley, which just sounds like the most perfect, like, rich, dumb guy name. Yes, I'm Mr. Blakesley.
Sounds like something you would find in the baking aisle.
He was the vice president, and L.J. Murphy was the secretary-treasurer. The college advertised as a 6-week program that would teach men how to assemble cars, a career that promised to make $75 to $200 a week, which is the equivalent of up to $5,000 a week in today's money. Of course, at the time, automobiles were relatively new, and Henry Ford hadn't stolen credit for the assembly line yet, so cars were still built by hand. Soon after its founding, however, Hill's partners left the company, and that's probably because the college was not really a college at all, but surprisingly another crappy scam.
Wait a minute, your name's not Napoleon? Fuck you, I'm out.
Well, technically it is. That's his middle name. It was all, he just dropped the first. But
yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah, you're one of those weird people that goes by your middle name out. We're done.
As they said in The Wire, my name is my name. All right? You can't just be like, I'm going to drop my name. Like, your name's everything, man.
So you may be wondering how this college is. You may not be, because pretty much all college is a scam. But this is a different scam. Hill had managed to arrange an agreement with the Carter Motor Company to have students assemble their Washington brand cars, essentially for free. It was free labor.
Yeah.
And the kicker was these students would pay Hill for the privilege of working for free, i.e. tuition. So
it sounds like college basketball a little bit.
Pretty much, yeah. While running the college, 25-year-old Napoleon Hill met another girl which he fell in love with. And
holy shit, he's only 25?
Yeah.
At this point, fuck her.
He's a mover and a shaker. Like I said, he's a success. He's a business genius.
He's completely tarnished his fucking name by the time he's 25.
Basically, each of these individual stories I'm telling of him all happen within like a year. He moves quick.
That's crazy because I'm knocking on the door of 30 soon, and
right, and you haven't built like any industries out of
like nobody knows my name yet, let alone like I haven't ruined my name yet. So yeah, I'm way behind.
I think the cotton industry is rife for the pickings, by the way, if you're looking for something to get into. So anyway, at 25, he met another girl and fell in love. And when she graduated high school a few months later, he married her.
Come on. God damn,
right?
Dude.
So the circumstances surrounding his marriage to Florence Elizabeth Horner, it's Hornor, Horner, who was the niece of a former governor of West Virginia, were as unusual as anything else in Napoleon's life. Apparently one day, just a week after she graduated, without any indication of his intention to any of his friends, if he even had any, or colleagues, Napoleon took his car out of the garage at the college after some students had helped load it up, and it says helped strap it with gas. So apparently it wasn't as easy as just pumping gas into it is today.
Maybe they gave him a extra tank or something.
Could be. He picked up Florence at her home, and the two drove to Marlborough, where they wed in a quiet, basically secret ceremony before driving back home to stay with some friends. Weirder still, 2 other members of the college would do the same thing over a very short period of time. So there's like 3 people at this college that just basically run off and secretly get married. I'm a big like believer in the phrase where there's smoke, there's fire. And when you're talking about Napoleon, it's pretty safe to assume that there's something underhanded going on.
When you're talking about Napoleon, he's on fire.
So there was something going on, even if it's not really clear what his scheme was. There had to be a scheme. Speaking of smoke, while the pair left for their honeymoon, multiple business partners and suppliers from various other partnerships, because he was doing things outside this college, took the opportunity of him being out of town to cut all ties with Hill. A separate partner, a Clarence J. Warnick, accused Hill of stealing a car, which must have been a pretty...
This is great.
Right, we can get out. So this Clarence guy accused Hill of stealing a car, but it must have been a pretty sound accusation because he would be arrested for that crime. My guess is it's what now would be called unauthorized use, where he probably was like, "Oh, Clarence, can I borrow your car to run to the store in Tallahassee?" Ha. So something like that. But
that's how most of those crimes go.
Right. And then in 1912, so just a couple years later, the Carter Motor Company that he had partnered with for this college would declare bankruptcy. As Novick puts it in his article, that was likely at least in part due to the fact that they were selling cars that were being assembled by people who had absolutely no idea what they were doing.
So, no, it was training.
Buy Carter Motor Company cars. The wheels will probably stay on.
We know our nuts and bolts. We just don't know how to put them all together quite yet.
It's normal for there to be leftover parts. That's a feature.
You can get it any color you want.
Shockingly, about the same time that Carter Motor declared bankruptcy, many of his former students began claiming that the school and Hill were frauds, which, of course, they totally were.
Anyone named Napoleon is probably a fraud.
A fraud, right. Except for the Napoleon.
No, he was a fraud. He was always on his horse, making people think he was tall.
He was tall. True.
It was like, that was bullshit.
It's probably history's greatest fraud.
Yeah.
But Hill was undeterred, however. He simply steered his college in a different direction. Instead of teaching students how to assemble cars, he would teach them how to sell cars. Before the year's end, there would be a detailed article in the publication Motor World, which sounds kind of like a heavy metal, rock magazine to me, even though it says motor. That's too on the nose. But they'd have a very detailed article outlining exactly how this program was also a fraud, shockingly.
His life is very, Wolf of Wall Street without, the real success chapter of it.
Yeah. If you talk to him, everything so far and everything in the future would be successful.
He hasn't had the real tidal wave destroys his yacht moment, but he's definitely not having he doesn't have a yacht.
Right.
Metaphorically, he might have a real yacht. But.
The article will talk about how all the school's flashy marketing materials were actually just questionnaires that were a way for Hill to gauge how much money prospective students had. So I imagine it's you remember, I don't know if they even still do them. They used to have those commercials on TV where it's oh, have you ever wanted to attend art school? Well, call us and send us money and we'll send you this art test to see if you're an art person. If you draw this bird, then you're in, that kind of thing. But really, they're not looking to see if you can draw. They're looking to see if you can afford to pay for their scam school.
Yeah.
The school advertised that all who attended would become appointed salespeople for any of the automobiles in the Washington car catalog. Each car they sold was valued at least $2,200. Sorry, 22. And out of that, they would earn a hefty $400 commission. But additionally, salesmen would receive a bonus of $3 per person who they got to not only buy a car, but also sign up for the college to become salespeople themselves, who would then, of course, be eligible to sell cars and sign up salespeople to attend college to sell cars and sign up other salespeople. If that scheme sounds familiar...
I'm about to start hitting my head on the desk.
It's basically every Mary Kay whatever current day like Tupperware scheme there is. Although it's parading around as a school.
Right.
But despite a large sum of money he borrowed from the bank and another $4,000 that he borrowed from his new wife's wealthy family, ding, 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 the college would close by year's end.
I don't know what you mean. You're telling me that wasn't true love?
Well, between his like affinity for just sleeping with women and probably
that's honest, good Napoleon there.
Right.
I won't take this slander.
That's my guess, is that he like hooked up with her and then he was about to like kick her to the curb and she's like, "Oh man, my wealthy father would be so happy to meet you." And he's like, "Wealthy, you say? By the way, did I tell you I love you?"
I don't know. He seems like the type of creep who would like find out about the money and then like try to woo an underage girl.
Well, that's a very real, especially when, like I said, you factor in two other people that worked with Hill or went to school. I had never specified if they were like fellow like employees or students or what, but two other people kind of ran off and did the same thing. So it's probably like they were sitting around one day like, "Man, let's go to the local high school, find some wealthy girls, and we can trick them into marrying us, right?"
Sleazebag, the movie.
So yeah, at this point, he's committed a whole bunch of frauds, but none of them have worked out. And I think it actually makes for a good stopping point because there's way more to this story, and there's no way I can do it all this week. So this is a two-parter, folks.
Fuck.
Right. Seriously, we're maybe halfway through, and some of the best stuff is like yet to come. The first 30-ish years, he's still in his 20s, but late 20s by now. I was giving you a pretty good idea where the rest of it is heading. But sure, whatever you're imagining, it gets better than that.
I hope it's just really, like a conveyor belt and a buzzsaw at the end. But
and then I had to make a note. I say better than that, really worse than that. But around here, on this podcast, worse means better. So yeah, part 2 will be coming at you next week.
So vote in our poll this week. Who did it better, me or Steve? And remember, I gave you a concise, thematically appropriate, seasonally fun Halloween story, and Steve gave you some shithead who you have to wait till next week for the end.
A big pivotal part of our show format is not having the other know what we're going to talk about. Yet we probably should coordinate a little bit.
To be fair, I couldn't do a whole episode of this shit. Like, I couldn't let you run this ship for an hour about Ollie and his bullshit.
Oh no, I wouldn't want to. This will work way better as a two-parter.
Okay.
And I have another story that I've been sitting on for a while that I want to talk. At some point, I'll do as a topic probably, and it'll definitely be a two-parter too. So when this came up, and I didn't initially. I was typing my notes, and I was planning on it all being today, and it's just the story keeps fucking going and going.
You need to.
I'm on page 6, and I'm like, well.
You need to trim your fat, friend. You can't be.
That's the problem. There's no fat in this story.
There is a ton of fat in that story. I will be editing it, and I will fucking rip out 20 minutes of fat.
Napoleon was born in 1883. This is a two-parter, folks. Tune in next week.
When you got a piece of shit like that, it's simple. It's who was he, what did he do, and who shot him. That's all I need about Ollie.
So yeah, that's part 1. Part 2 coming at you. Tune
in next week where we finally kill Ollie.
Ollie Hill doesn't exist. I, sir, am Napoleon Hill.
And I will have something else. Something else that will start and end on the show. That's a promise.
Until then,
I actually can't guarantee that.
I know, we've opened the floodgates now. We're going to be like, well, this is part 1 of 37 of my topic this week.
Part 100 will be when we hit our 100th episode and it's still in the middle of some story.
Anyway, thanks for listening. And I guess we'll be back.
And boo. It's Halloween month. Boo. Bleh.